evening, and welcome to the House Beyond the Supernatural podcast, the podcast that goes beyond the supernatural. All music comes from verse 13.
We are going to interrupt this podcast for an important announcement. We're having a quick change of plans today. Things have been happening, going on that, frankly, I don't have the GM juice today, so we are going to go into kind of a table discussion. But first, getting things, kind of catching people up on things. Life's been busy for me, so probably for the meantime, Nick and I have already talked about this. I'll probably be doing more of an every other week. So Nick is preparing to run, his shenanigans one week, and I'll be running mine the next. At least till I get my crap back in order, and I've been taking on extra gigs and other bits and whatnot to help pay for all the med bills. Because like I said, that gallbladder, when it left me, it also left me with a stiff bill. How do you know what's going on over there? All right. So, in other sad news, Burt Reynolds died today. 82 years old. Burt, he's kind of one of those personal heroes. Like, I know Arnie's his dudes, Smokey the Bandit. He and I kind of grew up right in that time where, it was one of my personal favorites growing up, and I'm pretty sure you're in the same boat.
Never seen it.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say, dude, Smokey the Bandit.
I wanted
man.
a goddamn Trans Am.
Everybody wanted that Trans Am.
I wanted that goddamn Trans Am.
I think like one of my best Christmas gifts when I was like 5 or 6 was like a Trans Am toy that my folks picked up somewhere. I think I actually played with that till the wheels came off. I kid you not.
My first Huffy bicycle, BMX bicycle, was gold and black because I wanted it. I wanted to be the bandit.
And it was eastbound and down, huh? Yep. So, that kind of blew out some of my groove as well. I've not seen apparently some of the classics like Gator. Apparently that's one I need to watch.
My favorite was
But
Cannonball
yes,
Run.
Deliverance, comes to mind. Cannonball Run.
Cannonball Run was awesome.
And while I absolutely hated Boogie Nights, I loved him in it. So
there's a reason they call me Kurt Diggler. One of my coworkers used to call me that. He'd be like, "What's up, Kurt Diggler?" I'm like, "All right."
Hey, take the compliment.
Hey, I took the compliment.
So tonight we're gonna have some discussion, roundtable talks, as it were. But first, the host got some letters in the letterbox this week, so I'm gonna start by answering some of those. One of the questions I got was, are your intros and ending paragraphs a normal thing in your home games? And I'm assuming he's talking about, or what I assume is, where I like reading a couple of paragraphs worth of stuff before and sometimes at the end of a game. And the short answer is sometimes. As for the long answer, I do write these intros and endings on rare occasion for my home games when I feel they're needed. I see them as meanwhile type scenes or a taste of things to come type of scenery to help keep players interested and remind them that the world is much larger than them and that I've got plans in motion rather than making it all up as I go. So, in light of the ongoing storyline being run via a podcast, I feel that more dialogue and details are welcomed to help the listeners follow along. Storyline is and has always been important to me, and I can't help but convey details where I can. To me, they are a way to get the listeners more involved in the podcast by knowing some details going on in the background and the background storylines that will eventually involve the PCs. If they happen to help induce a sense of dread of what's coming for the characters or going on around them, well, then even better. In some cases, they were about showing aspects of the game to help those who aren't familiar with Beyond the Supernatural. A good example would be the intro with the mage who summoned a large and dangerous creature from a dimensional portal. Arnie had mentioned that this creature was handling being put into servitude really well. And that was a major point of that intro. There are creatures that exist in BTS that want to serve higher powers. For some, it is their reason for being and feel incomplete unless they're doing the bidding of others. Not all of them are like that, but there are some. It also pointed out that things are going on behind the scenes currently that will inevitably become important details to the characters later on, but how they handle that information is up to them. Next question. Do you design puzzles and traps for BTS? And the answer is yes, I do. I love puzzles, always have, and have made lots of them over the years as a GM. The timing on this question is good, as I've been in a quandary as to how best go into certain puzzles, namely cryptography-related puzzles. And crypto puzzles are great to present the players at the game table, but I can't imagine they're being solved as much interest to the listeners, so I've been thinking on how to handle that. My best idea so far has been to give the puzzles to the players and edit out everyone solving them together and then presenting the puzzles on the website for listeners to work on themselves, or at least be able to see what the players were working on. If you gentlemen have other ideas around that, you're welcome to it. But yes, I will be throwing puzzles of various kinds at all of you guys. Nick and Arnie have experienced puzzles and traps in my game in the past. Speaking of which, traps are a far easier matter, as I usually write them up ahead of time and rarely use illustrations or pictures for them. The Gremlin Scrapyard trap that Nick, Arnie, and Ryan went through a few years ago was a particularly good one in my memory, and that still kind of comes up on occasion. Nick, see, Nick and Arnie, I know you guys were there. Kirk, unfortunately, he missed out on a really swank. That was one of my particular favorite write-ups was the Scrapyard. And someday I may revisit the Scrapyard. But I'm sorry you missed out. It was pretty cool. We still reminisce, and someday, if I ever have another one of these days where the GM juice is just gone, we might even do some reminiscing, which wouldn't be fair to Kirk. So probably have to be a night that he wasn't there, because otherwise we're all just telling him stories he missed out on. The answer to that is sometimes I do. It just kind of depends on, as a matter of fact, man, tongue-tied as hell. I write a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily automatically come up, in the particular game, because you guys choose a different direction or do a different thing that I wasn't either. I hadn't prepared for. I came up with different options, which is nothing to shake your head at over there, Nick. When Nick's like, "Fucking yeah, I don't railroad you guys. You guys do what you want."
I don't know what I just ate.
Oh. He gave a look like I said something
That's
wrong.
never good. I'm just sitting there looking at him. He's like,
so that look is all about he doesn't know what he just ate. So if he gets sick later during the show, we'll keep you guys in the know. We may ask for donations for his medical bills should the need arise.
Nick looks like he's puking.
Hey. So RDS, I do recycle things. Sometimes things you've run across before, maybe I'll do a tweak on them. But I personally try to hold myself, to a higher challenge, in that I don't like recycling stuff that I've used previously unless I feel there's a good reason for it. Because it's like you put all that effort. But I put a lot of effort into everything I do. Doesn't mean. If I don't use something that day, there's always a chance it'll come up again another day. Like, for example, we brought this up in the last session that we did, where, Arnie's character had showed up on the boat, and, I knew there was going to be one of two ways that Arnie may handle that, where A, he may let the curiosity take over as he explores a yacht, or B, he may just kind of run and hide somewhere, and he went with option B, and honestly, I thought that was the more realistic way to do it. But you never know. Characters can come in forms of some will run towards the fire, some will run away. Arnie's clearly the type who wants to run away. And that's perfectly fine. The point is, I have all this yacht information that someday it may come of use to me again. And I have it all on tap because I keep it. I keep everything I have recorded and put up for recycling as needed. So yes, I do recycle stuff. Just not stuff that I've used, at least not for some time. Because you're right, I do have stuff from like way back in 2006, 2007, way back when I first started playing that I don't think any of you guys were involved in. In theory, I could recycle some of that up. I try to keep a loose, ongoing story of things that have happened long ago because it creates more of a sense of storyline and history to the game. And it allows me to kind of bring up, once upon a time, as I'm pulling up a Dr. Smythe, years ago we dealt with one of these and what we did and how it happened. I might do something like that based on those things. But yeah, I may start farming some of those old ideas and bringing them up to the newer audience. So we'll see what happens with that. But I appreciate that you noticed that I put so much effort in, because I do put a lot more writing and research in than you probably realize. All right, here we go. Next question. What do you consider your campaign style to be? And if I'm understanding this question correctly, I consider my campaign style to have a healthy dose of pulp, secret war, and psychological with a good dose of monster of the week. Growing up on classic TV shows like Kolchak the Night Stalker and enjoying The X-Files, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and the earlier seasons of Supernatural as I got older. I mean, those are just a couple of examples. There's plenty of movies and books and graphic novels. I mean, my inspirations come from a whole spattering of sources. And I find that their methods of relaying storylines and information to be ideal for a BTS game. I usually try to keep the central aspects of Beyond the Supernatural intact in my game, where magic and the supernatural are real and few accept this truth, while the rest are oblivious to this fact. In this format, dread, terror, and gore can all be found in different amounts. Note that when I try to... 2 seconds here. Having a technical error. Here we go. For instance, during the last game session, the group set out looking for what sounded like a malignus, but instead some stumbled upon a dead body in a storm drain and a pack of aquatic monsters they weren't expecting. The results of that encounter brought about thrills and terrors that are still being played out, and eventually the group may have to hunt down that malignus another night. The malignus on the loose creates a sense of dread, while the group is currently realizing the terror of harboring little monsters inside them and or the horror of being food for the creature's young. On top of all this, the group has no idea what these things are as of yet, and John went from the danger of being a monster's lunch on a boat to confronting a group of what looks to be a group of black operatives coming out of nowhere and boarding the yacht that he was placed onto by said monster. There were lots of horrors, thrills, terror, a bit of a secret war, and a bit of dread to be found all in one night. It's worth noting that all of the events of the podcast thus far have taken place only over the course of 3 nights in game time, so think about all the crap that we've done in this game thus far. And it's only been done over a matter of 3 nights, and really 2 nights if you really sit and think about it.
Well, thanks for bringing that up, because Peter's going to have a word with Dr. Smythe about, we're going to hunt a malignus. Take this stuff. It's not going to be any good to you against these monsters in the water. Man.
We got set up to fail, man.
You're going to go hunt one thing.
Wait, man.
No, you're gonna...
your old rickety ass send us out there in good conscience. We're going to fucking die, you piece of shit. Get us a fucking bodyguard, you piece of shit.
Smythe will have we'll have an answer for all that, coincidentally. He's got an answer for this. Here we go. The hell was I? Oh yeah, so the events of the podcast this far have taken place over the course of 3 nights, which is to say it's really in the gear of pulp currently, but it won't always be. On occasion, I try to branch out into the fear of insanity and madness, and even cosmic horror, but I make them sparse. I'm especially careful to avoid silly campaigns. To me personally, poorly timed jokes and out-of-character comments are particularly rude while playing horror games and are antithetical to the horror atmosphere I'm trying to convey as a GM. Besides, the players provide plenty of silliness to the game via their characters already, so I don't need to add any more to that. The moment I start devolving into silliness, it'll never recover. So I generally keep it serious and let you maniacs, do all the silly for me via your oddball characters. Which, I got another compliment. Everyone absolutely loves all the people, from the paranoid to the nerdy one, and the one that doesn't seem exactly hinged correctly over there. So, and I'll put a pin in that, 'cause we're coming back to that later. On occasion, as mentioned, I run intentionally silly tongue-in-cheek adventures at gaming conventions, but I make sure players know ahead of time that this is the theme. So no one wanders into a horror game looking for a more serious tone and not finding it. I do make sure people know, hey, this is more silly. As a matter of fact, I started writing a convention adventure for next year titled Steve's Gallbladder, which is basically a group of monster hunters trying to find and destroy a cursed gallbladder monster. It's going to be very tongue-in-cheek and not to be taken all that seriously. Probably played on a Sunday after where everyone's exhausted and doesn't have much serious left in them. That's usually what Fridays and Saturdays are for. And I'm sure let's see here. I'm getting ahead of myself. So now, following the above-mentioned lines on how I personally play in an RPG is a good segue to go into what I would like us all to be talking about for this session tonight, which is building and playing horror characters. I've gotten several questions in various forms on character building, and everyone at this table has different levels of experience in this matter and have things to say and to contribute to this discussion. I'll also likely have some points to bring up for NPCs and GM responsibilities as well. I'm sure I've said in the past that character creation is a key part of any RPG. In horror RPGs, this is even more true as the player's investment in the horror atmosphere and events taking place around them are what makes it all work. The players need to collaborate with each other and the GM to build and maintain the atmosphere more so than any other genre. Generally like a lot of fantasy games and whatnot, you don't really have to do anything. Fantasy usually kind of speaks for itself. Superheroes and such, usually about the same. But horror, you do have to work a little harder for it. RPGs are all about having fun, of course, but the fun of horror games come from building and keeping the atmosphere together. And regardless of the outcome, if the players are having moments of being creeped out, experiencing chills or terror, and having fun while doing it, then you're doing it right. So, all characters start with a concept. The classes from Beyond the Supernatural are good for providing a lot of that for the players already, but the players still need to put in some time and effort in how they want to approach their PCs. If nothing else, they need to be more personal than most games. And this is why I try to highlight certain aspects of each PC over time. For instance, Peter had the opportunity to practice low-level spellcasting as part of his parapsychology training, while Cass has gotten highlighted moments while using all of his psychic medium abilities. I've done this to help keep the atmosphere going and to help Kirk learn how to use his abilities, as this is his first foray into Beyond the Supernatural, and being a newer player in general. So I will be doing this less and less over time as I expect Cass, or aka Kirk, to start asking and trying to perform Cass's abilities more on his own. I still got your back. Don't feel like I'm just going to let you, sink and swim from here. If it feels important to the story, I may do something for you automatically. But, eventually, now that I think you've hit, well, with maybe the one exception, but I think you've hit about every major ability that Cass can do with his psychic talents, so you know what to look for and have an idea. And I also usually like to remind everyone periodically to kind of reread your abilities and what your character's about in the book to kind of just help remind you what they do. It's always a good way to come back to that.
Yep.
Let's see here. I don't need to do this so much for Nick, especially as this is his second time playing a parapsychologist. And I'm going to put a pin in that coincidentally as we're coming back to him. And Arnie I've left completely on his own to provide his character's talents, as he's been doing this for as long as I have. And those of you who hadn't heard from previous podcasts, he introduced me to RPGs. So, looking into the concept of their characters, I want to let the others share what concepts they had in mind when making their characters, starting with Nick. So Nick, as far as Peter, what was your, obviously besides being a parapsychologist, what was your concepts when you were kind of thinking of what kind of character did you want to make, and why did you go that route?
Well, with Peter, I wanted him to be a little bit, I wanted him to be an oddball. I wanted him to be like the total oddball. Like, I was basing him off of one of these guys at work. He's super nice, right? And he's really smart, but he's really quiet and really, can't say nerdy, but really introverted. Like, really introverted. Like, he won't talk to you at all unless you have something really important that he needs to talk to you about. And he walks kind of hunched over, and he just kind of like, he's there. You know, he's just there. Like, I wanted Peter.
He's a fixture in the building.
I wanted Peter, like, if you see Peter, you're going to forget Peter the next 2 minutes after he leaves. You're not going to remember what he looks like because he's not important. And
unless he's wearing the big eyeball helmet. You'll probably remember that.
So, there's 3 rumors that we created when we created our characters, right? And I don't know if everybody knows these rumors for my character, but...
Yeah, I haven't brought them up yet myself, because I think I was waiting for rumors from these 2 yet before I start diving into that. But yes,
still haven't done my homework yet.
Cass knows them. One is that Peter has a split personality. Number 2 is Peter's split personality killed his parents. And number 3 is that is not Peter Corrigan.
So it could be 2 truths and a lie. They all could be true or none of them. So we're gonna see how that all plays out in time.
But so I wanted to take the guy from work and give him like a totem. Like when he puts it on, like he would be a totally different person. Like he would be confident. He would know what he was doing. That's why when Peter like puts the helmet on, it seems like he rolls better. He gets better. He knows more of the stuff that he's talking about, not so much like if let's call him oddball. So if oddball is in the field and he's got the oddball on, he's better at what he's doing. If Peter's in the field, he doesn't really get the rolls for his knowledge checks. Most of the time he fails them. But it seems weird because every time I put the helmet on and I roll for him, he gets better rolls.
Probably for the better you didn't tell me that, because if I'd known that was a thing, I'd have started giving you penalties when you weren't wearing the helmet.
Well, there you go.
But now I know.
So no, like I wanted Peter just to be, I don't know, just the weirdest dude that I've ever played. I mean, I played other parapsychologist named Jasper Von Nova.
Jasper, that's the name.
And he was just a hipster driving I think it was like the same car that Jasper drove in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So he drove the Citroen. He smoked, what was it? Lucky Strikes without filters. He had black glasses on. He had white belt. And he had a triple barrel shotgun.
Yeah, he was much more monster hunter than what most parapsychologists were supposed to be. He was always, his weapon of choice was a triple barreled shotgun. And he knew how to use it.
Yeah, I kind of wanted, and I played the Ghost Hunter before, a Night Hunter, and I liked being the Night Hunter, but I wanted to be a character that was in the background, like.
Which is another interesting concept, because usually parapsychologists are kind of supposed to be more a de facto leader type amongst the bunch, if only because they're the most knowing ones of the bunch. So to have a guy who's intentionally has no interest or maybe even talent for being up front, it's a neat way to go. But
if you notice, like, when the other 2 are screwing around, Peter will yell at them and be like, "Fine, whatever, you guys, fucking just do it, Jesus Christ!" and he'll take over, and so yeah.
What are you talking about? We're never goofing around.
So he's kind of, maybe that's just the split personality coming out. That's how I made Peter.
All right. For reasons not told on the podcast yet, I do not want to go into with Arnie as far as what he went to with John's concept, but rather in this case,
John.
What did you base John off of, Arn?
Well, I don't think John could be based on anything, to be honest. Arnie excels at making one of a kind people, and John is no exception. Speaking of which, John is, and Arnie and I, Arnie and I have that relationship. Like I said, we've known each other since we were 4 on and off, and we have a really good trust for each other. And as far as like our RPG years go, that Arnie can pretty much trust me to put his characters into situations, knowing that I'm not out to genuinely kill anybody, but I also trust him to know that I really don't need to give him highlight sections or because I know Arnie's gonna do his guy loud and proud, and he always finds ways of adding such great characterisms, which brings me to my point here. While I don't want to, or while I kind of don't want to go into John for safety purposes right now, I would love to hear him go into some of the details on his other genius character, Dr. Baldwin. Baldwin, on occasion, is probably going to show up in cameos throughout this game because, frankly, he's just too great of a character not to have at times. But Arnie, basically Dr. Baldwin, he's really hardcore character genius. Doctor type, and this is kind of something I almost always meant to ask and never got around to it. So this made an opportune time. What was going through your head when you were making Dr. Baldwin?
It was going through my head to, well, first of all, with Beyond the Supernatural in particular, I think I'm really attracted to the genius class. That class, whether it's physical or mental, and both the characters that I've made have been the mental geniuses. Thanks. But at some point, if I made another character, it'd probably be a physical genius, especially since none of us can swing a bat at all.
I got a bat.
Any efficiency or threatening.
I got a crowbar
or anything like that. But anyway, so I think I don't know where my original intent came from. Do you remember? Was there any
Well, again, kind of for example, because even I think way back in the beginning, you had intentions of trying to either have like a small clinic or something because you wanted to kind of have your own, your own wing of like strange, unexplainable mystery or medical mystery types.
With at least Palladium, I start my characters based around skills, and I'll think about what skill kind of set I want to have, and I'll build around that. So I don't remember what my initial inspiration for making a doctor was. It could have been just money, for all I know. I wanted to be a rich character or something like that. And if I was going with a genius, you're supposed to, make a ton of money and all that. But I was thinking also along the lines of more healing, which is the thing with Palladium anyway. But
we were fixing that and tweaking that. That's for another time.
So I'll get a set of skills that I want, and I'll build everything around that, and my character will kind of take form around the skills that I'm thinking of, because for the most part, I try to specialize in something really hard, where I'm really good at something, and then I'll have supporting skills, and then I'll have if I play D&D and stuff, I like to have just about as much defense as offense. I like to have a balanced character that's amazing at both, and I'll read through the rules, and I'll go through skills for hours and days and weeks at a time to find the right combination that I feel is going to work right. It's min-maxing, but it's thoughtful min-maxing. And sometimes I'll use outside sources, like when I played D&D 4th edition, I did some fucking internet searches for powerful builds, and I found one that I liked, and I tweaked it to it's kind of like playing World of Warcraft before everything was freaking just homogenized, and you had differences among characters. Like if you had a rogue, you could play a rogue a dozen different ways for different DPS levels, and you just got to try to find the balance or find out what everybody's using and then tweak it to your own shit. But anyway, so I find a skill set and then I'll tweak it. Like I know with my current character, I started making them on an Excel sheet. I decided what skills I wanted and what occupation I wanted to use, and I went through and I kind of make a list of the skills that I want, and then I see what skills are available out of my choices. I'm going to have 10 skills, and these are the ones that I really want, and these are the ones that are priority, these are the ones that are meh, and these are the ones that I can go without. And I think John had like a 7-page Excel sheet where I started with the first page, and then it filtered to the second page, copy and paste and tweak to the third page. Yeah, I have it. And along each one of those pages, you can see where I have like my name and my background, and maybe on the next page it changes a little because my skills change. Because at one point I was going to speak Chinese, and I was going to work with illegal immigrants, and so my name was different, and I had made up some like nicknames for my character, and on the next sheet they were gone because I decided to forego that skill set and go for something else, because I was trying to come up with something that was kind of all around skills for the type of skills that I have to cover everything in the particular type of skills that I have. But yeah, I always start with skills, at least on Palladium, and I build around it, and the character develops around those skills.
There is a lot of sound advice in what he's talking about. There's a reason I entrust him to run with whatever he does.
With Beyond the Supernatural, like Rifts, that Rift is more pick a cool fucking race and build around the race. Now that I think about that, but
that's how he's done it in the past.
I know Dr. Baldwin was the same, and the swordsman that I made was the same.
Swordsman.
Johnny Wang.
Wang. Okay, yeah.
He only played a few times, but
I do remember Wang though.
I did engineer the best swordsman in Palladium Beyond the Supernatural.
But yeah, he's not wrong. Palladium, it's and I think most Palladium characters, for the most part, usually one of the first things you do is do skill selecting. Occupation classes and things is usually a big part of the game, which I applaud, because I think, like Arnie said, it's one of the best ways to kind of individualize your character, make them do more of what you want. And because I don't go quite as far as 7 pages over an Excel sheet, but I usually do go through like 2 or 3 renditions. So I've never asked him this question before, and now to have, I'm glad, because he and I are pretty like-minded as far as how that went. But anyway, yeah, Dr. Baldwin again will probably have a cameo on rare occasion, as needed, because, like I said, frankly, he's just too cool not to have show up on occasion. He's a lot of things, and I loved every one of them. I mean, I love John too for very different reasons, of course.
John needs a lot more room to develop,
and he will be getting that room.
And that's when we it's hard to keep in the same mindset too when we have a lot of off time. It's hard for me to come back and do it exactly the same as before. So I'm pretty sure I've got a little inconsistencies with the way I act, but the more we play, it'll flesh out a little more.
Maybe a little bit.
Well, with somebody, different people in particular, like if I'm talking to Dr. Smythe, that's on purpose. There are definitely things that go on purpose, but
2 seconds here.
I'm going to Eddie Haskell the shit out of him.
Eddie Haskell. Wow. Okay.
He pulled one way deep with that.
That is kind of showing our age on that one. So, all right, Kurt, this one might be a little trickier for you to answer yet, as Cass is your first BTS PC, and only of a handful of PCs you've made thus far, to my knowledge, anyway. You started as the rookie in the bunch way back a few months ago when we had first started. But when you were making, all I remember back in the beginning, you were pretty certain you wanted to make a psychic medium pretty early on. So what was beyond that? What did you have in mind when you were making Cass?
Cass is his personality and everything, his laid backness, is me. The Jekyll and Hyde aspect of my character that comes out is my temper, but is my temper ramped up to like an 11. I'm never homicidal when I'm angry. It's just that I decided to do that for this.
Sitting next to you usually at every game, no one appreciates that more than me.
And then as far as I love to learn. I'm always wanting to learn new stuff. So I wanted to make Cass just be a hodgepodge of different things that he's picked up and learned. The psychic part, I like. I come from the video game RPG background, so I was always fascinated with the magic and the psionic powers and stuff like that.
Word.
So that's pretty much how I was trying to base him, and hopefully I can get to the point where I am completely happy with him.
Which, that brings up a good side note, too. I added a note in my paperwork here. It's worth mentioning that Cass's concept, he and I worked together, because he originally, he was kind of written up as, I think, scholar.
Just a scholar.
He really didn't have a focus yet, and when I was going over all of his skills and realizing what a math head this guy was, and I think chemistry and some other ones, and I was like, and astronomy, and as I was reading, I was like, it looks like you got the makings of an astrophysicist here. And I asked him to kind of take a leap of faith with me and kind of see where that goes. And we haven't really hit that up.
No,
yet.
we have not. But I'm excited.
There's going to be a lot more coming up on on his job. Again, he excels in things like astronomy and physics and chemistry and mathematics. But astrophysics. The whole astrophysicist angle with him is I'm anticipating. And especially the way I'm going to work with him in the future on this, while being an astrophysicist is really just more of it's all about discussing theories and whatnot for the most part. But there are some angles that if any science could potentially be prepared to explain the supernatural more than any other, it's going to come down to being being an astrophysicist would probably be one of the most likely candidates to do it. Especially if you start going down the round of where dark matter and such comes in, because that is something I want to touch on someday. Yep. And now that I got Cass here as my mathematical science-y dork to do this with, it's something we'll probably touch on one day. Could there be a sense of where dark matter has an impact on PPE, or is that potentially what portals are made of? Things like that are different.
Yep. That's
kind of the angles that Cass and I are that Kirk and I will probably be exploring together through Cass. So I'll keep you guys posted with all that. Cause like I said, I know it was a weird thing, especially for a first time player, to say, "Hey, I'm gonna ask you, be an astrophysicist, huh?"
I saw that.
I was throwing a lot at him.
And I was like,
that. For a first time
okay.
character, that's especially for such a specific occupation, one that probably neither he nor I truly know a whole heck of a lot about. But I have been doing my research with it, through the lens of where it is I want to go with the game, and as far as what astrophysicists might have an interest in. So that is coming. And once this pulpiness of everything happening so fast over the last few days is settled, that we'll start spending more time diving into character skills and like I said, giving Arnie more time to kind of find the right riff with his guy, and he and I need to sit and talk in private more on interesting things that we want to do with him. Well, not to mention arguably I'll be riding with all three of you guys in time. In the case of Peter, for example, I would almost like to get somebody to come in and kind of NPC Hannah on occasion. And one of the things we brought up was we're in the future we're going to start seeing about having a few guest players show up here and there on occasion. And either two of the gals that come to mind, Christina, who I've not had the chance to actually see her RPG in person yet, but everything I know about her, I think she'd be a natural at it. Would probably be good for NPCing her on occasion, or Shannon, who has played in my games in the past, and she is a freaking trip. She, I cherished all the role playing time that I've had with her in the past. She pulled off one of the best in-person Rickrolls, or in-character Rickrolls I'd ever, she's great with her characters, that like pranks and just these weird random things that she does, and I love her for it. So, either one of those two I think would be great for, if I can talk them into, maybe handling Peter's mechanical engineer assistant, Hannah, who currently the only real notes I have on her as an NPC is that she's that she has written up, or she was the one who designed his oddball helmet, has done the prototype that he's currently carrying, and they're currently working on new helmets and putting improvements on it and such. And so that's that note. And the only other note I have is that basically Peter hired her when no one else would, because while she is a brilliant mechanical engineer mind, she had an addictive personality issue in college and has a checkered past with drug abuse problems, and because of that, no regular person would hire her. But Peter seemed to have no issue to that. That's those are the only notes I have for her right now. But we're gonna build on that in time.
Can you meet her at group?
Find her in our group therapy session.
You guys would probably terrify her and send her away. Not to mention if anyone who attend, I'm not sure you're going to have a group by the next time you go back. The way you insulted everybody.
Well, like Peter said, that he meets his help, like other investigators and people that have the same like interest that he does from his group.
So it's entirely possible.
So it's possible that she was
that
that
she
group.
probably met him. In fact, I'll probably
For
write it
addiction.
in that way because that's making a lot of sense to me. So, I honestly I have no qualms with that. That they probably would have met in a therapy format in some shape or form.
Because
So.
pretty much Peter goes to 3 places: home, group, and Waffle House. That's about it.
Waffle House.
And when he says home, he's been living in the warehouse for 3 weeks prior to meeting Dr. Smythe.
Hey, now he's got a van he lives out of.
Down by the river.
Down by the river.
But one of the things that this is kind of a good point. I'm bringing this up too. Somebody had asked if we would consider doing a live podcast of my creating an NPC, and frankly, I talked with the rest of them about it. Nick brought up a good point that's probably not good podcasting to get into. I'm not opposed to the idea and would do it, but I think no one would probably listen to it besides that person that requested it.
I think if we do like a special episode, like we do our regular episodes, and then we have this one out in like the middle of the week, not just like this
not
is
like
our weekly
one of our
episode.
normal Thursday
Yeah.
nights.
Yeah, we
We'll
could.
come in.
Yeah, I don't mind doing that.
If we just did like a special, like
I'd be down with that too.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know that if in my younger years I probably would have loved that, but now that I've been doing this for so long, I think I would probably be more inclined to pass that particular episode up. But yeah, if we do it as like a special night sort of thing, that would actually be pretty ideal. But what I can state to that, Nick also added on a point when we were talking about this, was that usually most of his NPCs are kind of made on the spot to fit whatever he needs them for. Was that basically how you were putting that? I might have been reading more into your handful of words there.
no, pretty much. But I will say that some of those characters are awesome that I made like
Oh, yeah.
5 minutes, like Krong and Kriegor and
Dong and Dragor?
and Morty Stein, the
Morty
crazy bat kid.
Morty Stein was awesome.
And I've missed all that, so someday I'll have to listen to this podcast.
Oh, that episode is
I
my
wasn't here
favorite.
for any of that, and I feel like I've missed out.
So yeah, I can see the value of making a character like fleshed out, and like, but there's something also like that just came out of my head, right? Like that crazy
On the spot.
effing character just came out of my head.
There's something to be said for pure inspiration in the moment. There is you follow that because, and you're right. I've done plenty of NPCs that way myself. I mean, that's how the 3 things I know about Hannah now have basically come out of the need that he needed some kind of tech person in his crew, and right now he's only got the budget for one, and that's Hannah. So that's who he's got. But I have and I have made plenty of NPCs that way, but I will add a note here that sometimes I'll have a character idea that I'll jot down, and usually this tends to happen more during the more boring points of my life. If I've had times where I'll be waiting in a doctor's office, or especially when I worked in the brokerage finance industry, and I was going out of my mind with boredom with it. So I would start jotting notes and things to keep myself sane. And sometimes I would end up taking those home. In fact, I've had a few dreams. Sometimes I keep a little notebook on the nightstand. I have had times where I'll wake up and I had this dream that was like, this would kind of make a neat, adventure seed of some sort. And I've actually written them down because I know I'll forget them by morning. And there's times that they've been so good, I've actually gotten up at the 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning that I did. And I'll go downstairs to the and hit the office, and I'll start writing crap up while I still have it all fresh to memory. It's some of the adventures we've done in the past have come from that. So I think in a way, some of the the current creatures that we're dealing with, which no one really knows anything about because they've not existed before last week, anywhere, because those are coming directly from Stadal Industries, aka my brains. So yeah, I've had plenty of inspirational bits like that, but the other is I'm getting ahead of myself here. But the point is, I've had plenty of these times where I'll jot down bits and pieces, and I'll take them home, and I will end up making characters out of them that could potentially either be player characters or NPCs. Some of you might have looked on the House of BTS website. And if you'll notice, a lot of the NPCs that I write, or the pre-generated characters, most of those are probably about as fleshed out as pretty much my regular characters would be. And a good example of how important some of these characters, even though I just wrote them because I had this idea, I end up putting them in a vault. And sometimes I'll need an NPC that, hey, this guy would work for. Prime example of that, Dr. Smythe. I did not create him at the time with the intention of being such an important guy that he's turned out to become in later years. I honestly just wrote him out because I had this idea of this kindly old gentleman who's experienced a lot of stuff and is retired from parapsychology years and now works as a docere at the Seattle Natural History Museum. And as fate would have it, the characters years ago needed to visit the history museum. Like, well, this would be the right guy to talk to. And he showed up and kind of just became one of the most important things I have going in my games. I mean, you never know where they're coming from. So yeah, sometimes NPCs are pure inspiration, and they're fantastic when they work like that, as Nick and I know Arnie's probably had some NPCs in his life he's particularly proud of. As I know he's got player characters he better be proud of. Dr. Baldwin is, he's pure, he's pure genius in my book. But sometimes, I just write things up and, they sit in a vault, and sometimes they'll see the light of day, and I have stuff I wrote at least 10 years or so or more that I have not even touched yet. Someday they may come out. So that's my bit on NPCs, so but again, so someday maybe we'll do a special episode of that for the fun of it. Which probably will kind of also go into how I usually do my characters when I'm designing them, since we're talking NPC stuff and taking it, and I'll probably make sure everyone else is throwing in their notes and thoughts and ideas on whatever this guy or gal or guy or it or whatever's going to happen is going to happen. We'll check that out when that time comes. Let's see here. So going beyond the realm of archaeologists and doctors and scholarly ghost hunters, there is plenty of movies, books, and TV shows in my years that have provided a lot of good character concept examples for horror games. I mean, there's obvious references like the X-Files and Buffy's and all the others. In fact, one of my favorite character idea types to this day is Xander from the Buffy TV show. It's not easy being the powerless guy amongst a bunch of the powerful ones, and no one ever portrayed that better than Xander. And in fact, there was one of the last seasons they had. There was when Buffy's sister kind of got to this point where she realizes she's not powerful and really important to the group like the rest of them are anymore, and she's sitting with them at the table. And her and him are watching, Buffy and all the more powerful ones, the reformed demons and mages and witches and all talking to one another. And he kind of went into this bit where there's like, they will never understand how hard it is. And she's like, well, what are you talking about? He's like, they'll just never get how hard it is watching them do things. He's like, well, we'll never be able to do the things they do. And, and really all Xander was there for the most part is he was usually kind of a meat shield and, just kind of incidentally a lot. And he basically became a carpenter on demand because his job half the time was fixing a Buffy or somebody else's house when a demon came, smashing it up. And I always love that idea because you're right, being that guy in a group of people like that, that's a hard gig to put up with. It's a thankless, glorious duty, but he's still just as important. So I mean, if you really look at a lot of the TV shows and movies and things that you really enjoy with these particular character types, kind of look into what makes them tick, and a lot of those make great concept ideas. Other examples I can think of are like, any kind of artisans, clergymen, detectives, policemen, reporters, criminals, writers. Anyone who hasn't played it, Alan Wake to this day is still arguably, I think, my favoriteest video game as far as like storytelling games go. If you guys haven't played it, check it out. You can, because I know bits of what I do in my game have come from Alan Wake and probably still do. And that's where the writer idea comes in. And mages and mystic types and so on, they're all great examples for character concepts. So, if you, whatever inspiration you get them from, whether if it's for your NPCs or your PCs, there's no bad inspiration. On the other hand, are there examples of the kind of characters not to play? Well, frankly, almost any modern-day character concept you can think of can work, but there are some tropes and stereotypes that I do recommend steering clear of. For example, and Arnie knows where I'm going with this, the movie...
Misogynists.
No, that is a character flaw. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, if anyone can play one of those and still not everyone want to shoot him at the end of the night, it's Arnie who can pull that off. Most others have tried to be as good as Arnie at that and failed miserably. But Arnie has a singular talent for creating characters, alienating, and you still can't help but like him. Yeah, alienating is a great word. Because as a GM, I absolutely love John and his paranoid and even his kind of shameless cowardry. I mean, I love all of that as his GM. But if I, and it's kind of a credit to you guys that you put up with that as well as you do. Because if I was playing, I tend to play more leadership type of characters because I've been GMing for so long, and if I'm in a game that I know, I almost feel like I kind of have to play a leadership type because I just feel weird playing somebody who's clueless when I know everything that's going on, which would probably be why I'd have to be relegated to something like the autistic psychic, because I'd have to play somebody who has a lot of the answers but has no real way of conveying it properly. I would have to leash myself like that, or I've got to be a more leadership capacity type, and I know that kind of character would probably get pretty pissed off with John on a regular basis. But as a GM, I absolutely love him. But but now going to one of my best examples that I can think of is the movie The Crow. To this day, it is still arguably my most personal favorite movie to this day, and it has been since I first seen it. A little trivia fact for you guys. I saw that 9 times in the theater when it came out, more than any other movie I've ever seen in the theater. Most movies, I refuse to spend money on seeing something more than twice, but I saw that 9 times, and to my defense, and Arnie would remember this, I lived within like a block and a half walking distance to a movie theater at one point, and that's when that came out. So it was like, I mean, it wasn't really a big thing to go, but I was still spending the money every time because I didn't want to sneak into the theater because I was, even back then I was, all about supporting local and the little guy. And it was like just a little 3 or 4 screen movie theater that's long since gone defunct. But the point is, I love The Crow. But that being said, it's, it has to this day what I consider one of the worst tropes ever made, and that is the perpetually angry police detective. Specifically, Detective Torres is a thorn in Officer Albrecht's side that whole friggin' movie, and he's like always on edge, and he's always shouting, and he's generally just kind of always being an asshat in general. I mean, it's like the guy never really cracks a smile or seems like he's at ease. The guy always seems like he's always like hopped up on something, and you tell me it's just an automobile accident? Come on, man! I mean, he's always just freaking out about stuff. I guess this is your fault, Albrecht. I mean, he's that guy, and you hate him from the moment you see him on screen, and by the end of the movie, you hate him just as much, if not more. He's not a redeeming quality character type to want to play. You can alienate, like Arnie said. That's fine, but when you're doing it to like a needless point, just for kind of like alienating sake, it's a bad trope, and I do not recommend you go with that kind of character. I think I've also spoken in the past about being you can kind of fall for your own minutia of trying to be a loner type of character to the point of you being a loner just because you wrote it that way. That's another one I do not recommend, and I've fallen victim to that because you end up missing out on everything. It's like, what would the Hobbit have been if Gandalf came up to Bilbo, hey, you want to go to adventures? Like, nope, and just, disappeared? What fun would that have been, if he actually stayed home the whole time? I mean,
nope, Johnny
yeah,
Wang.
exactly.
no, credits roll.
I did that with Johnny Wang. The few times that I played with him, he really had that loner thing going for him. And I remember staying at the hotel while the other characters were out adventuring.
Yeah, and it's no fun like that.
How do I get myself out of the hotel and find him?
Yeah, you put yourself into and I've been there. I've done that very thing just during a Robotech game. I think I did a complete random roll up in the character generator. And that was like what I rolled was like he was a loner, keeps to himself type, and so I was following that, and that's exactly what happened to me. Where I stayed in my, like my room the whole damn game and never came out and did anything with the rest of the players. And I was like, where's the fun in this? This sucks. It's, don't make a character that's so detrimental to your type that you end up missing out on all the fun. Bilbo obviously wanted to stay home and be his happy hobbit self, but in the end he realized, there was that seed planted for adventure in him, and he went off and went on this glorious adventure. And had a hell of a time doing it. That's if you're gonna make your guy a loner or someone who doesn't like adventuring, that's got to be on the surface. You've gotta have something underneath it all. Whether if it's not even realizing that they had that sense of adventure until it comes calling from you, whatever it is, there are just some character types that are incredibly detrimental to playing. And being that perpetually angry guy for angry's sake, that's one I do not recommend. Being the loner type that ends up getting stuck in the hotel or in his room the whole damn time because he's just because you had him that way. It doesn't work. It kind of breaks the whole point of being a character. Another one that I like to bring up is let's see. Let me get on to the next one. Detective Torres, he provides little to the movie besides being an obvious antagonist and being a grating character for grating's sake and serves no real purpose in RPG mentalities. And then, if you guys think back to the films of the 1980s, if you needed a fiery, forceful, flinty, constantly angry, tough guy actor, you could do no better than by hiring James Tolkien. If that name doesn't ring a bell, think of Principal Strickland in Back to the Future, or Captain Stringer from Top Gun, or Detective Lubick from Masters of the Universe, and a whole slew of one-episode characters from various TV shows.
Slacker!
He was that hard-boiled, he was badass, and he was bald in everything he did. The guy's still alive to this day, coincidentally, and still does things on, rare occasion. I think he's, 87 years old now. But one of my favoriteest of new horror movies that's come out recently is Bone Tomahawk. And he's actually in that for about 90 seconds as a really cynical, just really cynical grilled down pianist in the bar. And he's there for 90 seconds of it. But he's still around basically doing the same character 30 years later. So it's... But point is, there's some character types that are just become grating for grating's sake, and the character from Top Gun, not a whole lot of redeeming about it. He was an a-hole from the beginning, kind of an a-hole at the end, but at least he laughed and cracked a joke with him towards the end, and I guess that was supposed to be some kind of redeeming thing. Back to the Future, obviously, he was kind of a tongue-in-cheek, tough principal, that you saw different versions of his, of him down the family line throughout the history. I mean, kind of a cornball, almost approaching sort of a, quirky comic relief type, depending how you wanted to look at him. But, and then he was Detective Lubick in Masters of the Universe, which to this day I will still defend as an incredibly underrated, misunderstood film. Because I know there are people that really don't like that film, and I understand a lot of those reasons. But Franklin Gillis, Skeletor, to this day, to me, is still one of the best villain portrayals of any type I've ever seen. I'd rank him up there with Darth Vader to this day. And in Detective Lubick, again, same guy, same bald dude playing a police detective. I mean, not really stretching his acting roles out there. He was hired to do one purpose, and it was to be that grating asshole police detective. But over time, he actually kind of developed a little more than that. It was kind of neat to see it. So, if you're going to be that guy, you've got to kind of give him leeway to kind of become something more throughout the future. If he starts that way, he should never end that way, is I guess where I would go with that. Any other particular character types you guys want to throw out there, what not to be? I'm sure you guys have got them.
Yeah, I got one. The overbearing, super aggressive... I'm going to fight every player, even though they're on my team. I'm still the best, and I will fight all of you
Rambo
to
Tep
prove it.
is the best.
I'm not talking about Rambo Tep. I'm talking about
Why
the
not?
Bugbear Brothers.
The Bugbear Brothers, yes.
They're like Rambo Tep on
Yes,
steroids.
yes. The Bugbear Brothers were a little overbearing at times.
Okay, wait. I
So
was
there
a
was
Bugbear brother too. So
there was 3 Bugbear.
Oh yeah, that's right.
There was 3 Bugbear Brothers, and I was a dwarf. You know where I rode the entire campaign? in his ass.
That's my ass. Somebody was in my ass.
Was I in somebody else's
You were
ass?
in
Not mine.
you were in John or Kobe's
I
ass.
wasn't into non-bugbears.
I was in John's ass. That's where I wrote.
Yeah, you
the
wrote
I
in John's
seem to
ass.
have really missed quite a
So
storyline
when
on that one.
So when we came to a battle, I would pop out of his ass.
You're talking literally. You were
Literally.
He was
You were
literally
shoved up his
kicked
ass.
in shit up his ass.
I could. My character was so weak he couldn't do anything. So it was bugbear. Holy crap! All right. So yeah. Okay. I'm going up your ass. You know. That was 2 years. 2 years of riding around
And-
somebody's ass. That was
and
the
you
most
guys,
fun campaign.
everyone
You were
was.
the ass slave? You weren't the ass slave, were you?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
This. Wow.
Yep.
I really missed something here.
Yeah. So
yeah, don't be overbearing.
That campaign, though,
I'm
just-
better than
that
everybody.
campaign was non-stop combat.
right.
Non-stop for a year and a half. Non-stop combat. I liked it a ton.
But when
Bam, bam, bam. And if you couldn't keep up with the bugbears.
it really sucked. So yeah, if your characters can't do anything, they're kind of like background.
Well,
It's kinda
that
like, why am
I
I
would
playing?
argue depends
Why-
on.
why
on
am I
the
here
RPG
playing this
too,
game?
though. That's also something that generally the GM should take more of an interest in, and I should probably go into that more some other night. Because in Rifts, that was one of the things I prided myself on, was that I had guys that were playing super powerful, tough dudes, and then I had Brandon, who was playing the operator. Basically, he was the mechanic who followed amongst the group, and easily the weakest guy of the bunch. It was nothing but him and that medium style of like armor that he had that wouldn't take more than 3 or 4 shots of anything at most. And he was still able to keep up with the rest of the bunch, and a lot of that had to do with just the GM has to put a little more effort into it. If you got the weak dwarf, there's got to be a better place for him than up a bugbear's ass. You just have to put some thought
that was
into that.
more the players.
See, and then there's that.
That really wasn't anything that was in the campaign.
It wasn't in the campaign.
He was
That
in
was
his ass.
He
not
just
in the
grabbed
campaign.
him. John just grabbed him and just.
So it was like Harry Potter living in somebody's ass.
I could see I would have had to take the drinking to be able to play in that game, because maybe I take myself too
We didn't
serious
drink
sometimes.
hardly ever in that
Drinking that
game.
one.
But I think I would have, is my point. I think to keep up with all that zaniness, I need a drink. Then someone's gonna Arnie would have to start picking me up and
They were
driving me
disgusting.
home.
Mine was a psychopath. I just wanted to kill everything, including eating children, because that's what a monster would do.
And that makes
And
sense
so
as
I
a
had
monster
to be
type.
restrained quite a bit.
What was their motto?
we eat what we kill. We kill what we fuck, and we fuck what we. Wait, no.
You're on the right track.
We
We eat what we kill. We kill what we eat. We
fuck
kill
what we
fuck,
kill.
and we kill what we fuck.
There were 3. It was 3
Something
lines.
like that. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. It was,
That was more Colby's thing.
more Kobe.
Okay.
My line was books are stupid.
And that makes sense, being a bugbear. That makes a lot. The dwarf being shoved up your ass. That I kind of question that, but I wasn't there. I couldn't defend you on that one.
but it is D&D, so why would you ever pick up a book? Right?
To throw it.
Right.
To burn it.
I'm not reading this. It's cursed.
Yeah, there is that too. Pretty much everything out there the GM wanted you to read was cursed. So being shoved up bugbears' asses is not a good character type. I got you there. I can follow that logic. Sounds like you were missing out on a lot. That's a pretty shitty character.
Literally.
Kapow!
I was like going through those D&D books for 4th edition, and I'm like, oh fuck, I'm gonna be a bugbear. That thing's fucking badass. And then also like John's like, oh, I'm gonna be a bugbear. Those are badass. You hit it right on the head.
And it just kind of
Let's be
devolved from
brothers.
there, huh? Kirk, you got a character type that you really don't like or don't think would make a good character type?
No, I think Nick.
Like I said, movies, books, TV shows.
I
it's
hate
all
the.
fair game, man.
I hate the. Just like Nick, I hate the annoying. I'm gonna take everything. I'm gonna fight you for it. You know.
Well, see, I guess that maybe that's more of a player thing there too, though. I guess.
No, I don't really have anything. No.
I hate being put into that situation where you have to be aggressive with another character. Like, once I was playing West End Games Star Wars, and it was a Jedi-based campaign, and one of the players was fancying himself to be having some dalliances with the dark side and with these shady characters, and we were stumbling upon this great adventure where we were finding these rings that had some sort of big secret, and he was giving information to bad people, to the bad guys. He was giving information to the antagonists, and that started a lot of. There was mine was the goody two shoe. He was a little homicidal for a Jedi, but all of my characters are a little homicidal. But he was goody two shoe. We have to, fight these bad people, and they're no good. And well, I guess Rambo's kind of like that too.
I will say, John doesn't seem very homicidal to me, but he is very survivalist.
But because that one guy was doing this thing where he was doing this arc, and he wanted to deal with the dark people, right? It was cool for his character, but it put my characters in a bad situation where I went and I stole something from his room because I didn't want him to give it to the bad guy. And it started kind of a bad night came about that. But,
and there are times where, bad nights. Because if I was GMing tonight, like I said, being as the kind of mood and the groove that I came in with tonight, I might have killed one of you guys mercilessly. I don't know. There are nights where, it's like I should not be GMing. Tonight would have been a night for that.
I hate the annoying sidekick character. The one where you just want to fucking strangle them.
Oh, like Cass?
What's a good example?
No time for love, Dr. Jones.
I see what you did there.
No time for love, Dr. Jones.
Okay, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is a perfect example of how not to make a movie in general.
Yeah.
So that's...
Like the little kid in Spawn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got quite the appreciation for the Temple of Doom after the fucking Crystal Skull.
Well, you know what? The Crystal Skull is
Well,
another
there's the
fine
sidekick.
example of how to not to make an Indiana Jones movie.
Then you got Mutt Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mutt Williams. What a character.
So, by that
No
logic,
time for love, Dr. Jones.
Because yes, that kid, even when I was a kid and saw that kid grated my nerves.
Yep.
I remember even as a kid, like, God, I hate that kid. Yeah, even back then I knew that guy was that he was gonna be trouble, and there's like I said, that whole movie to me personally is a big freaking wreck. I mean, I'm talking like a smoking wreck of a movie.
Over Labor Day weekend, they played the Indiana Jones trilogy on was it TNT or TBS, one of those, and my wife and I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then they put Temple of Doom on, and I'm like, so you want to go drive around and look for houses? And she's like, why? I said, because I absolutely hate the Temple of Doom. And we stayed out and came back, and then Last Crusade came on, and we watched The Last Crusade.
When they call it a trilogy, that's interesting, too, because Temple of Doom is actually a prequel to Raiders.
Yeah.
Which, when you think more, I remember watching it after, I got old enough and mature enough to realize, wait a minute, this takes place like several years before Raiders did. And then, you kind of start realizing those inconsistencies, such as his reaching for the gun and not being there, which was an obvious reference to, Raiders. I mean, everything about it just falls apart. I mean, it's just a bad movie in general. But the more you think about the word, but on top, the cherry on top of all that is, an annoying sidekick character that travels about with you. If you're gonna be an annoying side character type, you've got to make him at least funny enough, or at least quirky enough that he's kind of fun having around. And I think a really good example of this, when I was laid up after my surgery, I watched like a lot of my favorite summer mindless films because I was too doped up to really watch anything serious. So I was going back to a lot of my summer favorites, one of which was The Mummy. And if you guys remember Benny, perfect example of if you gotta be a sidekick character, you better be a goofy, quirky, funny one. Because when you think about it, he was really a villainous little crap, but he was still so damn amusing enough that you almost feel bad for him at the end of the movie. When he finally gets his, and I do stress almost. But that's you've got to kind of really think about how you're going to be that kind of character. Because, yes, you could easily turn into Short Round if you're not careful. You be a Benny, not a Short Round. I want that. I want that quoted somewhere, so I'm going to put that on the website.
That's the kid that played Data, right? In Goonies?
It was.
I loved him in Goonies. Hated him in Temple of
Data
Doom.
was great, which, as I understand, he grew up and he was in the Walking Dead there, which I still didn't believe for a long time.
Oh, I don't watch that show.
So, I still didn't believe that at first, and I was like, yeah, he does look familiar.
Pinches of power! Pinches of power!
Yeah, no, pinchers of peril.
Booby trap! I said booby trap!
You mean booby trap? That's what I said!
Booby trap!
Love that kid. Oh, who doesn't? Who didn't love Data, man? He was great. Slick shoes! Slick shoes! To me, he kind of grew up to became like the Heroes Unlimited, mechanical guru. Is kind of, he is actually a great example for Heroes Unlimited. If you decide to go the hardware route, he's great inspiration for that, because I'm pretty sure that kid would have grown up to been somebody in Heroes Unlimited, like a Tony Stark type or something. I mean, I don't think Iron Man would ever have slick shoes, but you get the idea. Slick shoes.
Chester Copper Pot.
Any other ones you guys have to throw at me as far as character types that bug you?
Who I hate certain NPCs.
Let's hear them.
You know who I'm talking about. The Mike Palmer, the Mike or all the NPCs that are in the game for no real reason other than to make you look like a piece of shit. They're usually hot females and they're unbeatable. They're unkillable. And they know everything, and they always are there, but they never really help, except to, be a pain in the ass.
know-it-all.
Arnie's...
Know-it-all, super fucking badass fucking NPC.
Oh, like the
really
demon? Like the demoness that we're fighting right now?
That doesn't sound
Kobe's girlfriend?
Demoness, that's a foil. That's something totally else. What's the other girl with us, though? The whore.
The whore.
The unclean one.
I guess I missed out on joining in on this
So,
campaign.
I mean, worse than that were Palmer with his NPCs. But those NPCs that don't really serve a purpose other than to, I don't know, fulfill the DM's own something in their psyche. But that they annoy me. I don't.
Well, and
now John's isn't as bad as Mike Palmer. Mike Palmer took that to the extreme.
There is, and
they were there to dominate you with Mike Palmer.
Arnie is stepping on a landmine with this one, because this could be a whole nother segment in and of itself. But yeah, I will try to shorthand. I teach a couple of, teach is a strong word, but I do. At a lot of the gaming conventions I go to, especially the ones where I'm there as like a guest writer or whatever, I usually do a couple 101 classes and things of what to and what not to do, and I do have a segment that I refer to as the Mike Chronicles, because Mike happened to basically teach me about everything of what not to do as a GM, and I always like trying to find the good in people and finding the positive, and to Mike's credit, I did play in a lot of different games with him over the years, because he spent about every dollar he had on RPG books and various systems. And about every 2 or 3 weeks, we were switching up to some other game system that he got excited about. So I got to do a lot of different games. And that was pretty cool. I treasured all of that. But having him do it as a GM for most of it, was really a lesson in patience and tolerance, and inevitably I had to, I eventually left the group because I just wasn't meshing with it anymore. But Arnie is absolutely right. As a matter of fact, one of our regulars, Chris, and I have had discussions about that, because he's still, because I still run into him at some of the local game cons. We bring that up, that we knew what kind of trouble we were in with Mike's characters, and yes, they were always female, But he had like certain levels of where his NPCs, basically, if I was to short explain what his NPCs were basically PCs forced upon us because they were so godlike in ability that we were all kind of relegated to being NPCs around her was a lot of what it felt like. And yes, Arnie is absolutely correct that she, that it was, it was a humiliating, really a lot of times just a degrading experience thing because we were basically forced to go around her whims because we couldn't do anything about it. She was the most important person on the board, because Mike made her that way. And yeah, we used to have this joke about it. If she was fully statted out, you were in your chances of beating her were slim. If she had an illustration or a picture, chances were even less slim. And if he colored in that illustration, there's nothing you will ever be able to do that can remotely compete or contest anything that particular character had. That's just how it was. Every game, and I would have thought over time that he'd have picked up on what we were all telling him, and he and some of the others, used to kind of let the fur fly over that. I was kind of too young and polite at the time. I was only, but I think Arnie and I were like 15, 16 when all that was going on. 15 through 17, I want to say, I think were the years that we were doing the Mike game. So we were young and still learning and a lot more politer than we should have been. And Mike was, this cool dude living in his mom's attic, well into his mid-late 20s, whatever he was, and spending his life doing RPG stuff. He was kind of living his best life, and it was neat hanging out with him for it. But yes, this is geared directly at the GMs, and I've made sure I have never done this myself. In fact, I'm pretty sure Dr. Smythe, that's kind of, he's kind of a perfect example of this, that anybody at this table can
we
beat
could
the
beat him
holy
up.
hell out of Dr. Smythe. He walks around on a cane. He's got 2 bad knees. He's got a pacemaker, which coincidentally, Dr. Baldwin saved his life, and is one of the. That's how they actually met each other. He gave him he saved his life and put the pacemaker in him. All this. I love intertwining little character bits and pieces, but yeah, Dr. Smythe, he's got a lot of smarts in a lot of areas, but physically, yeah, and he's out of the game. He can't do the physical stuff anymore. He has to let you guys do it, and I think some of that probably does stem from the fact that Mike had these NPCs that had just a lot of really weird, suspicious things too. Because one of the things that unilaterally every female have that I remember was they were they always had they were like always impervious to disease.
They were impervious to everything. I made that character, the Marvel character, with shape changing and a monomolecular power out of the Ultimate Superpowers book, right? And
I remember.
I also took disintegration, and disintegration was one of the powers where the less range, the more power, right?
Right.
But anyway, when you could shape change and you had this monomolecular ability, you could cut just about anything. It was like Wolverine's claws, right?
You're
so,
right.
He had this character, one of his
godlike chicks,
NPCs, and I'm like, he was challenging me to do something to her, and I'm like, well, let me see her staff. She had some trident or something like that. And he's like, here you go. You can't do anything to it. Totally confident that my character couldn't even fucking break her staff. And I'm like, okay, well, if I do this, I'm like level class 3000, and I can just, what's its toughness? And I was able, I'm like, doing this and this, I can just chop this in half.
By the
right?
rules, he could do it.
And he's, I don't remember what his immediate reaction was, but he's like, oh, well, she takes it and she puts it back together. That was it. There was no rules or anything like that. She just put it back together. Well,
there was no getting any kind of upper hand on his NPCs.
No, they were dominant. They were powerful. They were the gods.
And we were both basically lowly NPCs in flesh form
we
at
started
his table
making
around
characters in that camp,
strictly,
in that group,
yeah,
just to fuck with it. Do something against his NPCs, or to do something against other players who were bullies. We're going to make this character just so we can fuck with this one person, because we know this is how they're going to make their character.
And that's the whole thing. That kind of contempt breeds that kind of group. We all started out.
Should never be a bully when you roll. a bully to strangers. I can be a bully to people I know, but be a bully to strange people you don't play with? That's just being a dick.
Like you say, no, it wasn't grading. What was your word? Being, oh, you just said it earlier. Not grading, but, well, whatever the hell. Point is, yeah. Doing it to people you know because we know we're doing it and all get fun at the table. Yeah, that's one thing, but yeah. To strangers walking to the table, what the hell's that about?
I just spent 2 hours making an Archer Ranger for this D&D campaign that I walked in on. It might have been the first time I played with Palmer. I can't remember because
the first time you played was with me, and this guy was not part of that yet.
All right, well, this fucking Anton LaVey fat ass fucking. What's that when you have diabetes, nasty ass, soaked his foot, nasty, ugly feet in salt water while we played? Some fucking bitch.
He had a lot of health issues, yes.
He was playing a character from another campaign, from another person's campaign, right? He was playing a vampire, which I don't even know if you could play as a fucking PC in that edition. I don't fucking know. But I go through and I make this Archer Ranger, and boom, I'm introduced to the group, and right away this guy shoots me through the head with a crossbow and technically kills my person. But Mike was nice enough.
Wow, his experience sounds like my first experience.
I walk into the room, he's like, oh, he's an archer? I'm a vampire. And that was his justification for killing me. Instantly, with his super powerful character from another campaign.
And again, this is where the GM, should have like I said, Mike resurrected you, like you said, which was fine.
I don't think
that
there's
was the right
anything
thing
Mike
to do.
Could have done because fucking.
Well, I would have been
of
of the mind of telling him to knock that off and would have time traveled that back before I would have just did like a magic, because that should just there's no need for that of any sort. There is logic to a character, but then there's just being plain unrulingly unreasonable for just for mean sakes. And it sounds like Kirk has a story he wants to add to that. So yeah, let it out.
My first time ever playing D&D. I was like 9 years old, and he's like, "Okay, we're like, all right, you roll this guy." So I made up this character. I'm like all excited because I'm gonna play this new game because. Never played it before. And we go and he fucking shoots me in the head. First thing, I'm dead. I'm like, well, that was fun. And I didn't play ever again until Nick introduced me to.
So again, for those of you listening, don't be that guy. Just don't. It sucks. And if your GM is worth half the salt he should be, because at my table, if that becomes a thing, there's no longer space at my table for you. And I have kicked people out. And it's also why the older I get, the more selective I get about people. Like Kirk, I let him in because Nick vouched for him, and I trust Nick. But if
thanks, Nick.
I don't know that I would have just let some guy come in off the street to my table anymore in my crotchety old age unless somebody vouched for him.
That's why I keep asking questions about these people coming in and playing characters.
Kirk's proven he's a good player. I'm glad he's at my table. He's been a great rookie at this table, and I'm glad to have him. Because I've had plenty of problem players in the past, and granted, I grew up in the '90s, which was a much more Wild West of RPG days. As I understand it and see it, most people are playing a lot more. With a lot more grace and civility than they used to, especially as there's more females and such at tables. But back in the day, I saw a lot of stuff like that. And I know we're getting a little off topic of where we're going here, but this is just as important as where we're going with that.
Well, I did not realize you were only 29.
Apparently, there's an illustration we'll need to have scanned.
Grizzled, a little older. That's how I imagine.
That's some hard drug taking there.
Wow. Holy crap, Cass! You're not aging well, man.
Kind of scruffy hair and
apparently being an astrologist has not been kind to you. You're being a science dork is really taking it out of you. I didn't realize you looked so hardcore grizzled boiled over there.
You kind of turned into a grocery store manager.
He did.
And I'm the Unabomber.
Yep. He is the Unabomber.
Alright, where was I here? Oh yeah, comical split personalities.
I might be able to take a wrinkle out of the forehead.
That was another one I always had a problem with, where people were taking, things like split personalities just for the sake of doing something really cornball comical with their character. If you're having a split, try to make it a point of actually having a split character if you've got to do it, because having one that you just split and become a straight weirdo for weirdo's sake that doesn't really provide much to the game, I'm not a fan of that myself. I think it gets more annoying than anything else.
It's a rumor. It's a rumor.
It's a rumor.
I wasn't aiming that at you specifically, Nick. That wasn't a warning. I don't know if you really have one or not. I'm just saying, if you were to have a split personality, that should.
I might have taken 5 years off. He's still a little older.
You should probably put that on the wall. That's a pretty fine piece.
There you go.
Awesome.
We should have that scanned and put on the site, because that's
needs a background.
Actually, he almost looks like if Meatloaf from the '90s lost a bunch of weight. I'm serious. You look at that face. It's like if Meatloaf lost a ton of weight and kind of became medium build. That's pretty much what he would look like. And I would do anything for love. So there you have it. Cass looks like a medium build, younger Meatloaf from the 90s.
Those psycho problems you have really aged you. I'm thinking some alcohol and substance abuse. A lot of cigarettes. I don't know.
That time over in Afghanistan really fucked me up. That's from hard living of 5 years in Afghanistan.
Made you look like Meatloaf. And that's for rock and roll dreams, can't you? Keep on believing. Oh, man. Split personalities for goofball corn sakes. I don't like it. It bugs me personally at the table, especially if the character is there just kind of being. And if you're actually doing something with them, I'm all right with this. But it's like when you suddenly change a split personality and just act really stupid, weird, not really providing anything to the particular situation. You're just being a loon. That bothers me personally, and I don't find it to be a wise character decision with your stuff. Let's see here. Or having obsessions that you use to comical effect for no other purpose. Kind of like I remember this one guy had, naturally he tried to be a complete womanizer type, and looks for love in all the wrong places, but he never really did anything about it besides just kind of bring up stuff for comical effect. And when I actually gave him an opportunity to kind of do something with that, it's like the guy kind of faltered, and I think he short circuited, because then he's like, "Oh, I really got to RPG that out. I'm just doing it to be funny." I gave him an opportunity to womanize for game purpose. Point is, he gave me a hook, or a character hook, and I gave him an opportunity to pursue it, and he just flinched. During the headlights,
baby.
He had no idea.
That's what I'm talking about.
What he wanted to do with it. He didn't try to hit on this gal or anything otherwise. It just kind of came out a complete waste of space character hook. If you're giving your guy a hook, use it. That's really, I think, what I'm trying to say on that one. Let's see here. Again, I know I brought this up in the past, but coming up with short biographies is a good way of helping you get into your character's head at times. Even after, kind of like in Harney's case, after his 7 rounds of character design go, adding a short biography after all, that's a good way to help you kind of keep your headspace. And if you're not sure where your character's compass should be going at a particular time, I like having those. So I can kind of reread what I had in mind with this guy when I did it, and it's kind of a good way to help get your alignment back to where it is you were trying to go with. So if you don't remember what it was you wanted to do, read your biography. It's good to have it. I mean, I'm not talking like write a book or anything, just a couple of paragraphs. So is all you need, just something that lets you know what it is. When you need to, this is your base that you can always return to with that character. It's they're good to have for that reason. Character hooks, I'm sure I've said it before, I am a huge fan of hooks, and there's a whole bunch of tropes and types out there and there are reason they're tropes because they work. Ones that come to mind from various movies and shows is like, you have a childhood curse, You got a mortal enemy you're dealing with. You have an evil ancestor in the family. You're cursed by haunted items. You're suffering some insanity. You got a missing relative you're looking for. AKA the Agent Mulder syndrome. You've got time. You're missing time issues. Maybe you got a criminal background. You got an orphan vision. Oh my God, this is great. I've got to get this thing scanned. You might be an orphan, or you have visions. Like I said, split personalities. And this one's kind of going beyond a little bit of the scope of where I was going with this too. And this is again where you kind of got to make sure that when you're working with your GM, have a little trust in the GM, because and if you're kind of new to the GM, this is something I recommend you talk with your GMs ahead of time about. You ask him where it is he kind of wants to go, or what visions he kind of has for the game, and where I go with this. And Arnie, I think, knows what I'm talking about. He and I have both had craptastic GMs that basically would throw your character like just into the meat grinder with no other purpose and just kind of make you suffer through it. To me, that is a pure sign of bad GM work, especially if he has no intention of your getting out. I've had really good characters suffer numerous fates just kind of at the end, at the hands of just kind of an asshole GM who had no interest in seeing the survival of that character or really anything else in that game. Because I ask you guys to go into fearful situations all the time. This table is full of characters that they're not combat-oriented characters. They're pretty weak, real life type guys, and you guys still entrust me to put you into bad situations, knowing that I'm not just gonna do it and make sure no one gets out of it. I mean, Arnie took a good leap of faith with me last week. That it seemed like it looked like for a moment there his character was just drowning, just because I felt like drowning him, and that was not the. And I know Arnie was probably like, "The fuck's he doing to me?" But
I can't swim.
I don't know how to swim. But and again, my stuff was written up that could have been any one of you three. So it turned out in this case Arnie it worked out for us. So I had no particular person, because I don't think anybody in this group has swim. I don't think any of you can.
I don't know.
So it really didn't matter who I nabbed. It would have looked like you were drowning to death, and then this teleport thing kicked in, and which threw him onto what he thought might have been the safety of a boat, which kind of led to a whole new problem. So but I always have a plan, and I don't throw you guys into something that, even if you can't see it, immediately, there's always usually a way out of some kind. I don't, to me, it's pretty antithetical to throw you into something just to watch it all, die off for it. And that takes a leap of faith, and I appreciate you guys letting me do so. Because otherwise, horror games don't really work. And let's see, I think we've probably gone over the time, if I'm guessing, right?
That's all right.
But we had a lot to talk about, so.
Yep.
Any other quick bits any of you bozos feel like adding in before we sign off in this episode?
Not me.
I like turtles. There we go.
Nope.
I have no proof, but I think Kirk just farted.
You don't need proof for that. Most likely, yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it was me.
The only game where my character doesn't shit themselves or fart in the water is this one.
Well, he hasn't gotten water yet.
Well, that's a lot to be proud of.
Every other one.
Oh
yeah.
Well, I'm really hoping he contains that whenever. I hope you rise to that challenge. I'll put it this way.
Fart jokes is funny.
Dude, I'm running a grown-up game here. There is no place for fart jokes.
Keep that for Ninja Turtles.
Ninja Turtles and Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters.
That's why I don't do it in this one, because I'm afraid you'll say that to me. No, don't do that.
Don't you do it.
Don't you fart. Don't you fart.
Everyone's going to start looking at Cass. Don't you do it, man.
No.
I have no idea what he's talking about, and I still think it's funny. I'm not present to when he's having these moments.
I'm a little grown up and more mature in this game. But Not really.
Which, I was going to say, which really makes me concerned as I think about, what the hell's he doing in his other games? Well,
just listen to McRibbit Origin 1 and 2, and you will find out.
So,
calamari
or the calamari one. Yeah.
Is that a fart?
No, that was the chair.
Oh, right.
That was the chair.
Who's the chair?
No, the calamari one. We had a little bit too much to drink.
Sounds like we're going to be putting the kibosh on this particular episode. So this has been Steve,
Nick,
And Arn.
Kirk.
all wishing you an awesome kick-ass night. And again, don't be that guy. In a world of sidekicks, oh shit, I should have wrote it down. In a world of sidekicks, be a Benny, not a short round. There it is.
There we go.
That's your takeaway tonight. Be a Benny, not a short round.
Hey everybody, it's Nick. Hope you all enjoyed this weird episode of us just talking about our characters and how we created them. Yeah, I got another hour and a half if anybody wants me to put that out, because I didn't want to put out a 3-hour episode of us just rambling about our characters and past game experiences. I thought it might be a little boring for you guys, but if you guys want it, just let me know and I'll put it out there for you. And if you do, just get a hold of me at btspodcast@yahoo.com or check out our Twitter page at Beyond the Super 1. And also, guess what? We're now on Instagram. Check us out at Podcast BTS. And we're on YouTube at The House Beyond the Supernatural. All right, everybody. Hope you all have a good night. See you next week. Bye.